Hello and welcome to the program once again. I am Suren. I would like to talk to you about pride and false pride. Pride and false pride. Here comes the very first thought to mind when we consider the subject matter. The characteristics of the individual in question may be something like a caring person who loves everyone and everything, or a person who dislikes everything and people. But what is the real meaning behind these words? Now, we have a very interesting subject to consider. True pride is a healthy, realistic satisfaction, accomplishment, and behavior aligned with personal values. In contrast, however, false pride is an inflated, insecurity-driven need for superiority and validation, often leading to arrogance, defensiveness, and fragile self-worth. As we all may know that true pride motivates growth, false pride breeds social divisions, as we read in the magazine Psychology Today. I will say the true pride is a healthy, authentic pride. Realistic view about this is the person displaying this natural state is well and truly grounded. This is the honest assessment of such one's abilities. Self-provincial or pride, validating oneself internally based on hard work. Respectful pride, acknowledging the achievements of others without feeling threatened. Think about it. Behavior-based pride, that is proud of actions taken. For instance, I worked hard. What about false pride? It is the opposite, unhealthy, hubristic pride. Inflated ego? Well, a fragile, exaggerated, or false sense of superiority, where external validation may be needed, heavily relying on admiration and applause from others. Defensive and hostile pride, often feeling offended easily and being quick to anger. Manipulative pride, using tactics like boasting to create a specificity, often covering a deeply rooted insecurity. Arrogant pride, well, involved in looking down on others, a kind of attitude. For instance, I am better than them. We find it in 12-step philosophy. False pride is frequently rooted in a fear-based deep disability of the spirit, such as the need for control, often resulting in isolating behavior. While healthy pride encourages growth, false pride creates a rigid, unchanging image that tempers personal development and damages relationships. Sometimes, as we discover, using shame as motivation to succeed in life and love can create genuine pride. Avoiding shame can, on the other hand, remind one that there is a motivation towards becoming successful and true to oneself. Avoiding shame can also create false pride, or a fragile ego in constant need of defense. Shame can be very emotional and even more shameful than that. The socially negative judgments from others, disproving, contempt, being forever disgusted, are the observable trends. They can simulate continuity of shame, from embarrassment to humiliation. But the internal dimension can include failure to uphold or live to one's own standards, values, and expectations. There are people who aim to destroy others they don't like, and using such treasonous aims, for instance, declaration of disbelief about someone's abilities without any reason, especially immediately after being introduced to them, is one such example. Either it is deliberate or evil, or there is a considerable amount to the lack of intelligence on the part of the instigator. It is therefore worth considering that internal risk lurks in the shadows of the heart, soft notes of self-doubt that might spew forth under stress. Although there is a continued threat to the sense of self, shame is rarely experienced. Habits of avoiding it begin in toddlerhood to protect the emerging sense of self, and by adulthood these are extended and become remarkably automatic. Blame, denial, and avoidance are the offspring of the same. Blame usually is transferred to someone else, outside. Denial hides it from the world. Avoidance keeps it at bay with distraction, thrill-seeking, alcoholism, obsessions, compulsions, anger, resentment. Many people regard shame as an internal punishment mechanism to be avoided at all costs. It is used socially to punish. Shame on you, remember? And by some cultures to control behavior. Condemnation, for instance, shame, as with Jehovah's Witnesses. Some parents discipline their children by making them feel shame. For instance, my ex-partner did that skillfully with her children, as herself experienced the same from her strictly alcoholic parents. There are types of shame, and one of them happens to be the internalized shame. This is a very caustic form of shame. Negative judgments of others, wrong assumptions, as, for example, from Jehovah's Witnesses, permeate the sense of self. Internalized shame, dominating the self-talk with negative labels: loser, sinner, weak, unlovable, or unfit. These are the expected qualities they see fit with people they trap in their midst to control them. Some humans tend to shame themselves for repeated mistakes and justify it with delusions. For instance, if we feel bad, we will not make that mistake again. Therefore, let us worship only Jehovah, for example. The value itself is more likely to act on impulse and habit than the value itself, which is why self-shaming practically guarantees overeating, drinking, drug addiction, skipping exercise, poor task performance, or parenthood, and more self-depending behavior. Like, for instance, the service to Jehovah's organization is apparently more vital than one's own life, as to what sense they created within my ex-partner. When we consider the subject of motivation, there is a big difference between shame from internal shame. This needs to be truly emphasized. However, not make mistake here in understanding the subject correctly. Internal shame is not a punishment for failure. It is a motivation to succeed, and is a correction signal and not a failure signal. It is a guardian of personal values. It is never indicated as being bad. It tells us how to do better next time. In short, internal shame is motivation that teaches one to be true to one's own self. What about pride? False or true variety? Question. Pride is the direct opposite of shame. People with false pride invest heavily on the impression management. Manipulation of others to have positive impressions of themselves, calling others perhaps with devastating labels, as for example with "you are a sheep." They feel entitled to esteem of others and quick to perceive any nuances of disrespect. False pride floats on a sea of internalized shame. True pride is the good feeling we get from behaving in accordance with our deeper values. True pride is our reward with no need of praise from others and no desire to manipulate their impressions. False pride is pretending that we do not make any mistakes, for instance. True pride is learning from our own mistakes and correcting or compensating for them. When the inner shame contradicts our pride, we get anxious, depressed, angry, or even resentful. We tend to cope with the contradictions through self-obsession. Now, we are talking about the inflated ego. Yeah? There is almost always a feeling of deserved entitlement here. And of course, multitudes of manipulation. There is even more. Devaluing others, mentally, that is. What about over-shaming or just making someone feel small, defective, repulsive, isolated, unlovable? Frankly, some of us experience this form of shame from others. Let us call it the ashamed shame, if it makes sense. It is a psychotherapy truism that the people who shame others carry, and there is indeed a lot of internal shaming of themselves. To start, understanding this fact can keep you from internal shaming comments from certain others without pointing a finger to anyone. Compassion for no matter how bad it must feel within those who shame others could help more. Although we might feel self-righteous we don't, and certainly cannot, genuinely love ourselves when shaming others. That's a fact. How can then one build true pride? Good question. You know, your self-shame cannot change through affirmations alone. For example, telling oneself that one is successful or truly accomplished, powerful, lovable, and so forth. If you tend to be self-obsessed, practice taking other people's perspectives without any judgment and assumptions. Good advice. If you suffer from inflated ego, practice humility. Admit to human frailty. If you feel phony or like an imposter, act on your deeper values. Become the person, partner, parent, brother, sister you really want to be first. If you feel entitled to manipulate or control others, practice basic humanity and begin showing interest in the well-being of others. If you feel like devaluing others, almost all Jehovah's Witnesses used to be at the time, as I have experienced without being a member of the cult, but under pressure of my ex-partner, recognize that you too are a frail human being. If you feel like shaming others, that is especially immediately after being introduced to someone, no matter who they may be, focus on self-compassion, sympathy for your heart with a motivation to heal and improve. Practice self-compassion and basic humanity. That's a must. These have been also the result of observations mainly by Stephen Stosny, PhD. True pride is independent of other people's impressions. That's a fact also. You can feel proud when giving anonymously to charity, for instance, or when helping someone without expecting gratitude and showing respect for everyone. On the other hand, there indeed is a healthy pride which is about self-confidence, reflecting and intrinsically motivating can-do attitude. Do we make sense so far? Those with such pride find their achievements richly satisfying and truly believe that nothing succeeds like success. The pleasure afforded them through achieving things or simply handling them effectively makes them eager to follow up their individual accomplishments. Those with unhealthy pride, however, may be equally insensitive to succeed, but the dynamics governing their motivation differ markedly. Keep that in mind. They are inordinately driven to succeed, and repeatedly, because they cannot really internalize their individual triumphs. If they are to hold onto their ultimately self-confidence, they must constantly prove to themselves, and not only to themselves, but to others as well, that they are worthy. The reason for their constant struggles is that deep down, the self-doubt or feelings of shame that plague most of them while growing up still, though below the surface awareness, continue to disturb them. By way of compensation, or actually overcompensation, their brand of confidence is likely to come across as cocky or bullheadedly confident, and that is a pronounced reaction to what psychologists allude to as narcissistic injury. For instance, they may not be feeling loved, but they are caretakers simply for who they were, but only for the quality of their performance, which typically needed to be superlative all along. A further point we need to consider is the healthy pride, which represents a positive notion of self-worth and is based on a history where personal effort and expenditure of energy led to success, and the major factor in the achievement of such individuals is that they are not satisfied with mediocre performance, striving rather to do the best that is in them. This is why there is a sense of self-worth that merits of being seen as earned. Opposite of this is the unhealthy pride, depicting an overly favorable evaluation of self based on giving oneself too much credit for accomplishments that are typically much more than modest. Such overvaluing of one's abilities or achievements can also relate to attributing to one's self successes that belong as much or more to others involved in whatever task or project was successfully completed. People with healthy pride genuinely feel good about themselves. That explains why such pride is routinely associated with high, although not artificially high, self-esteem. Contrast to this with the elevated self-regard of individuals with unhealthy pride, which finally bogus, and that is inflated and easily punctured by criticism type, which in turn can lead to the powerfully overblown defense of anger and or rage. In short and sweet, false or the unhealthy pride is destructive, particularly when you are proud of doing something that hurts others. With false pride, it is a pure ego. We understand that a person might be proud of being lazy, stubborn, or even bullying and hurting others. It is very sad indeed when people harbor pride at not taking in new information. Having pride for the wrong measures or wrong reasons versus healthy pride and false pride speaks for itself, says Lean Namka. Psychology and spirituality have different definitions of ego. The ego is defined by Western psychology, at least as we know, as the central organizing principle that is necessary for ongoing life. It takes its information from the senses of sight, hearing, and touch, as you may guess. After all, something has to figure out the day, organize tasks, and assign meaning to experiences, and that is the major responsibility of ego as viewed by today's understanding of psychology. We all need a strong ego to deal with everything that needs to be accomplished to survive in a world we currently experience. You have to be somebody before you are nobody. Having said that, let me add, we hear widely considered wisdom. The journey in psychology is designed to empower and heal the damage to ego, not to transcend it. Psychological defenses to our reactions to our strong attachments to a belief system of how things must be scream out, insisting things be as we want them to be, to feel safe. Unexamined defenses are arrested at the age of a little child and experienced as an early trauma. Trauma freezes the energy in the past. Those rationalizations, like justifications, denials, and defensiveness, come out when we feel the emotions of helplessness, anger, fear, and hurt experienced in our childhood. Reminding ourselves once more, the false self has an unhealthy pride. That's it. The ego, in most spiritual circles, is defined as that it touches to the false nature of who we are. It obscures or wills our time and nature of being the divine. It is, however, unaware of its limitations, prejudice, worries, arrogance, judgments, addictions, and repetitions. It was born of the personal history and suffering, and overlay attaches to the self-image, although it may feel separate or out of the greater whole and must be constantly on the lookout for any threats to its demise. It fights for its survival against any change, against losing control, against the unknown, and against the spiritual journey. False pride keeps a person separate from others. That's it. Putting others down appears to give some people a minor boost and feeling good about themselves, but it is a sign of low self-esteem. Excessive vanity, on the other hand, puts too much pride around one's appearance. Believe it or not. In this sense, pride is narcissistically connected to being extraordinarily special, actually looking good for the wrong reasons to boost one's self-esteem. That's it. Overemphasizing pride of the superficial, temporal, or material aspects of your life can make you a very shallow person. Believe me. Let us not forget that pride is a normal human emotion. Healthy pride is about effort, persistence, and cultivation of behaviors that make you a better person. It is feeling good in a sense of achievement. As it was said, feeling proud of self helps them associate the feelings of good, proud of themselves for working hard through something hard. Demonstrating how to pat themselves on the back literally helps cement in healthy pride for effort and persistence when facing a hard task. As it was said before, Ernest Hemingway once said, "There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self." And so, study pride and how it affects your outlook on life. You can work to release any unhealthy idea which comes from the troublesome ego. Start by watching your thoughts of judgment and pride. Catch yourself in the act of feeling proud and determine if it makes you happy, and then give it the fair just and kind test. It works. Does what you are experiencing feel haughty? Consider. Would you admire this attitude if you saw it in others? What can work our thoughts and bring them to a conscious level to assess them and send those less admirable ones packing? Think about it. I will leave these thoughts with you for now until we will meet again by the next episode. Please make sure to like and also be a part of the team. Subscribe. Until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.